Three hat-tricks in Game Week 4 scored from Haaland, Son and Ferguson. We all know Haaland is essential in our teams, but are the other two? We're going to discuss that in this video. And someone who is missing the goal is Nicholas Jackson. Is it time to sell our Chelsea assets? We're going to discuss that in today's video. So of course, make sure you do drop a like on the video, and of course, smash that subscribe button. We're in for 10k before that Game Week 5 deadline. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. So first up, we're going to kick things off with 8 things that you may have missed from Game Week 4. These are really important to know over the international break for you to decide what to do with your transfers. So first up, Son played as a centre forward. We've been discussing this. Richarlison has been really poor as a number 9 in this Spurs team. Linking up okay, but missing those big opportunities. And somebody that we know is so clinical in front of goal is Son, and he got his chance in Game Week 4 against Bournemouth, and he couldn't have done much better with a hat-trick. This is one to monitor. We're going to discuss Son in a bit more detail in a minute, but him playing centre forward completely changes him as an FPL option for the good. Number 2, Nicholas Jackson was top for expected goals at 1.48. First and foremost, I am so damn brave wearing this Chelsea shirt on this video after that performance, but we got to back the Blues. So Nicholas Jackson is a real hot topic right now. Again, we're going to go into a bit more detail in a minute on him, but it's worth noting he still had the highest XG at 1.48. And for anyone that missed that chance, you got to go check it out because it is one of the worst misses of the season. So number 3, Cameron Archer started for Sheffield United and he scored and got an assist. A really lively debut for Sheffield United. And we need to remember he's 4.5 million. So amazing for those that had him in pre-season. You're definitely winning in this situation. For the rest of us that don't own him, we need to get an idea whether we are actually ever going to play him in our starting 11s to justify the transfer. Otherwise, if you haven't used your wildcard, it might just be worth waiting to use your wildcard, because I don't really see many situations with so many fantastic midfielders in our team that you're going to play Archer for a Sheffield United side that score very infrequently. So one to monitor definitely. Number 4, Alvarez's 4th start of the season and 90 minutes in pretty much every single one. Now I say that because he came off with like a minute to go in Game Week 4 that's just gone. But Alvarez playing in that number 10 behind Erling Haaland alongside Foden, we cannot consider him a rotation risk anymore. Now, does that mean he won't be going forward? He absolutely could be, but he is as much of a starter as some of the other attacking players in this system, even the likes of Jack Grealish, for example. So Alvarez was a rotation risk. He still is a rotation risk, but the numbers that he's putting up right now, the performances that he's doing, we need to consider him as an FPL option in our teams. And again, I'm going to come on to Man City and Alvarez a little bit later in this video. Number 5, Haaland hat-trick. Now, I say obviously here, but there was a little bit of talk in the community about him not being a perma-captain going forward because the numbers weren't as good as what we saw last season. Just get that out of your mind right now. He is still as much of a perma-captain as he's ever been. And away against West Ham, I think that's a tough game in Game Week 5. But realistically, are we going to look past someone like Haaland off the back of that impressive hat-trick on the weekend? I very much doubt it. Number 6, Rasmus Højlund made his debut for Man United in an impressive spell off the bench against Arsenal. Now, I know they lost the game, but the one key takeaway we would take from this is Højlund looked very, very impressive. Stretched the game, showed the pace, but also his hold-up play against someone like Gabriel, who's a very aggressive defender, was really, really impressive. 7 million. We need to monitor him as a forward. I wouldn't be rushing into him, but I really do think he could be amazing value in this Man United attack, especially if we're deeming Bruno or Rashford not essential. He could be the route to points at a much cheaper price. Number 7, Darwin Núñez started as a centre forward and got 2 assists and missed a lot of easy chances. So we are getting the Darwin Núñez that we saw last season, but for me, this is the way Klopp needs to play this Liverpool team. He has the technicians in the midfield. He doesn't need a number 9 to drop in and be creative. He needs somebody who is going to stretch the game and really cause problems for the backline. And Darwin Núñez ticks all those boxes. Now, of course, coming off a little bit early, that's a problem always you're going to get with Darwin Núñez. But he is still a menace and something that we do need to consider if he is going to continue playing as a centre forward in this Liverpool team. And last up, talking about forwards, step forward Ferguson with a hat-trick for Brighton against Newcastle of all teams. A tough cookie. We're going to come on to Ferguson in a bit more detail, but you definitely need to have him on your radar as a cheap forward if you want to go down there. But those are the game week 4 things that you have missed. Let's get into a bit more detail. Okay, so no doubt the first hot topic needs to be, is it time to buy Son? What an unbelievable performance, but not only Son, but Spurs in general. Now, before we get onto Son, I just want to say, we're in a situation right now with Spurs where they have put in very, very good performances week in, week out in the league. Now, I know it's a real small sample size, and I don't want to come into any conclusions right now, but I think this Spurs team know how to score goals. I know that is probably a little bit of an obvious statement right now, but when we are buying players, I also want to look at the overall team in general. So a team might be kind of chugging along, not really getting the performances like a Chelsea, for example. When you see a team like Spurs who have clearly adapted to what the manager wants and have hit the ground running, I don't think we need to hesitate on buying their assets. And it was kind of an example last week of the Maddison Sterling situation. I know it's a little bit of like, you know, results-based kind of outcome here, but you definitely argue that Spurs have looked a lot more fluent than Chelsea in the attack. So there's no surprises here that Son is on the menu, especially now that he's playing as a forward. Now you can see here the player heat maps. Again, I need to emphasize here, it's only 4 game weeks worth of information. So we have game weeks 1 to 3 here. So obviously we have a bigger sample size. And the furthest player heat map there is from game week 4. Now, the game week 4 touch heat map is very sporadic, very few touches for us to come to any conclusions. And I don't really want to talk about where he touched the ball, because we can see in game weeks 1 and 3, he's still got penalty area touches. What I want to discuss is where he didn't touch the ball in game week 4, and that is on that left flank. Playing as that centre forward means he isn't getting dragged out and having to be the wide option in this formation. He is solely in the team to play between the sticks. And that is exactly what you want when we are looking at an FPL option, especially someone like Son, who is such a clinical finisher in this team. So, again, such small sample size, we can't really come into any conclusions regarding Son right now. But looking at the fixtures for them over the foreseeable future, I don't think we need to be too put off by Son or Spurs assets in general. So, Sheffield United at home in game week 5, what an unbelievable fixture to buy a Spurs asset if you want to. 2 after that, I understand managers might be a little bit hesitant. Arsenal away and Liverpool at home. Now, I think Arsenal were okay against Man United defensively. Somebody like a Saliba is always going to be an amazing defender to put up against someone like Son in a fixture like that. But I don't think they're impenetrable at all in defence. And then Liverpool at home. Again, I fancy goals in that fixture. And with the high line that Liverpool play from times, a brilliant opportunity for someone like Son to get in behind that defence. Then they have Luton, Fulham and Crystal Palace. Really, really good long-term fixtures, and I don't think we should be put off by these Spurs assets at all. Now, in terms of like a plan of action for Son, I've tried to kind of condense it down into one slide here, just to give us a bit of an example of what you should do. So first and foremost, should you actually buy him for game week 5? Well, first and foremost, the 9 million price point is a tricky one. It makes him a tough buy because you either have to come off from someone like a Rashford, who away against Everton might not feel like the best time to do so, or you have the money in the bank and you upgrade another midfielder in your team. So I think the 9 million price point is tricky. However, Sheffield United at home is an unbelievable opportunity. And if I said to you right now he was going to get another hat-trick against Sheffield United, I don't think anybody will be surprised, because defensively, Sheffield United look championship. And the way that Spurs are playing right now, if they are going to put 5 goals in against Burnley away, I think they could definitely do that at home against Sheffield United. So, look, I'm not going to put anybody off buying Son in game week 5 at all. But I think if you buy him, you hold him through the trickier fixtures as well against Arsenal and Liverpool. Now, can you buy Son if you already have Maddison in your team? Somebody like me, who has Rashford, but also Maddison, should I double up on the Spurs attack? And the way I'm looking at it right now is, I think you should be happy with Maddison. Is he the better option? I'm going to say Son is probably the better option now if he is going to play as the centre forward. But I don't think you should be panicking and thinking, oh, I need to sell everybody to get Maddison and Son in my team, because I think that game week 6 and game week 7 fixture is hard enough to not justify bringing in double Spurs attack right now. And the big question is, if you're sat there with Maddison, should you do a sideways move and bring in Son for him? Now, as I discussed, if I was buying fresh right now, if I was wildcarding, I would buy Son and just hope that he does stay as the number 9 in the system, which I do think he will do. The only way that I would sell with a free transfer Maddison to Son is if you've sat there with 2 free transfers, you have no other transfer that you want to make for your team, then I think doing Maddison to Son is actually a good move, because you just cannot deny that he will be a better option than Maddison in this system playing as a number 9. But otherwise, if you don't have those luxury transfers available, just stick with Maddison, because he is on flames in this team. I just think Son could do a little bit better. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Are you going to be buying Son ahead of game week 5? Now, moving on to another hat-trick hero, it is going to be Brighton's Ferguson. One unbelievable performance from this young man. So look at the underlying numbers so far this season per 90 minutes. He's played about 220-ish minutes so far over the 4 game weeks. 0.87 expected goals. Really, really solid numbers for a forward. Shots per 90, 5.63 and 3.89 per 90 in the box, which is really solid underlying numbers. Again, the XG kind of correlates with shots on the box a little bit as well. It is worth noting. But again, I've spoken about this in previous videos. When a forward has nearly 0 expected assists, that is absolutely delightful reading from an FPL perspective. So some people probably think, I want a well-rounded asset like a Gabriel Jesus who does a bit of both. I always want the Callum Wilson of FPL. I want the guy who is just in the team to put the ball in the net. And when we see expected goals and shot numbers like this, that is exactly what Ferguson is in this Brighton team to do. Yes, he's good at link-up play. Yes, he's expected to do so, but he is also expected to be the man that puts the ball in the net. The João Pedros, players like that are the ones that are there to occupy space and create opportunities for this man. So, Ferguson at 5.9 million is honestly one of the best value players in the game. But here come the negatives. Fixtures first and foremost. United away, Villa away, Liverpool, Man City in the next 5 are really, really tough fixtures. And on their own, they're tough. But when we chuck in these cup fixtures, they're even tougher. So just to read these off, between game weeks 5 and 6, they have a European League match fixture. And we know Europa League is really, really important to Brighton. They're going to play their best players in these fixtures. So between game week 5 and 6, a Europa League fixture. Between 6 and 7, EFL Cup. Between 7 and 8, Europa League. And between 9 and 10, Europa League. This team is going to get stretched in terms of its squad depth. And I don't expect them to let up in these Europa League games at all. And if Ferguson is deemed as the starter in this De Zerbi team, then I expect him to get a lot of minutes in Europa League football, which is not good for the Premier League at all. So I know he scored a hat-trick. I know he's probably one of the best value players in the game. But because of the fixtures and because of the cup competitions that they're involved in, I think he is a hard avoid in our teams, unfortunately. And maybe later down the line, once Europa League kind of ceases and Brighton fixtures turn good again, we can look to invest in him. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Next up is a forward who is on the opposite end of the spectrum in Nicholas Jackson, who just could not put the ball in the net in game week 4. For anyone that missed that opportunity, go check it out on Twitter. It is one of the worst misses of the season. So is it time to sell Jackson? He's been a very frustrating asset. He had the home fixture against Luton where he finally got his goal, but it wasn't as impressive as we first thought it would be. Then we had the Nottingham Forest at home game where we all thought it was going to be another repeat of the Luton game, a comfortable victory for Chelsea, and it certainly wasn't that. And it was a tough day at the office for Nicholas Jackson. So I've got the touch heat map for the opening 4 game weeks, and I've also got the underlying numbers for the opening 4 game weeks as well. So firstly, we can see from the touch heat map, he's getting plenty of touches in and around that penalty area. He's getting himself as a centre forward between the sticks. Yes, he's coming into the middle third area to link up the play as we'd expect, but he's also getting some positive touches in the box. So I'm not really reading those touch heat maps as a bad thing at all. Now the underlying numbers, 1.01 XG per 90 is really solid numbers. I know he's missing big chances, and I know he isn't putting the ball in the net for us FPL managers, but I don't think that XG per 90 is bad at all. I know that probably is a little bit skewed from that really big miss that he had against Nottingham Forest, but he's been in some good opportunities throughout the opening 4 game weeks. And shots per 90 at 3.82 with 3.57 per 90 in the box. Again, really solid underlying numbers. Now, looking at the Chelsea fixtures coming up, Bournemouth away, Villa, Fulham, Burnley, Arsenal, Brentford. They're not great, but they're not terrible either. Now, I'm really hoping Pochettino does go back to a back 4 in this system, as I really think that is the way forward for this Chelsea team. I know they don't play a back 5 in theory. They do revert to a back 4 in attacking phases with Levi Colwill playing as a left back in a manner, but I don't think Chilwell is the best player to have in this system to really link up with a Nicholas Jackson. I really do hope we get back to a sort of familiar team that we saw in the pre-season situation. So, in terms of Nicholas Jackson, I don't think it's a hard sell at all. I think the numbers are good. I think Chelsea are still going to do okay over this period because they've still done well from an XG perspective as a team. They just couldn't score in that fixture against Nottingham Forest. So I think it's a luxury transfer. I know you're probably in this situation where you're hating on him right now, but I don't think you need to sell him right now. But I think there are other options that are emerging that definitely need to be on our radar, who I think could easily outscore him over the opening game weeks off the back of the international break, which we're going to come into now. So I've got 3 replacements for Nicholas Jackson if you were looking to move away, which you could consider. But I am going to say these are a little bit rogue picks. So, for example, Ferguson isn't on the list because we discussed, I think he's a rotation risk. I haven't put any Newcastle forward on the list, Wilson or Isak. I think they're good options, but very similar to Brighton in terms of cup. We have the Champions League on the horizon. I just really don't know who Eddie Howe is going to play between Isak or Callum Wilson in the Premier League over that period. So again, those are big risks as well. Now, these all have their risks as well. Alvarez obviously being in the Champions League, Darwin Núñez, Europa League, Jesus with Champions League. They are all risks. But I've put these 3 as real nice alternatives if you want to go down a Nicholas Jackson replacement. So first and foremost, Alvarez at 6.6 million. Started every game, played 90 minutes in every game so far, and is looking like a fantastic pick in that Man City team. Fixture proof. Any Man City player, I believe, is fixture proof because of the way that they are in this league. They're the best team in the league, one of the best teams in the world. I don't care what their fixtures are. I know that they can put in the numbers against any side in the league. So we don't need to worry about fixtures for someone like an Alvarez. And he's such a cheap ownership into this Man City attack at 6.6 million. It's ridiculous value. And if I said to you in pre-season that he was going to play every minute in the opening 4 game weeks, there wouldn't have been a question. He would have been in every single one of our teams. And as I just discussed before, every single Man City player is a rotation risk going forward. But 4 starts, 90 minutes in each, I don't think we can get much more information than that to think to ourselves that he is in Pep Guardiola's plans, absolutely. I think we just need to accept that. We go there and we just say to ourselves, yes, he could get rotated, but the upside is so good in his favour. Now, the problem here, the underlying numbers aren't actually explosive. He's below 0.5 XG per 90. Again, a small sample size, and his XA isn't great either. So the numbers compared to someone like a Darwin or a Jesus historically isn't as good because he isn't really playing as a centre forward. He's playing as a 10 in that system. Everything still does funnel through Haaland. And that is the one thing that I will say there. And of course, cup rotation. I don't know what's going to happen with Man City once Champions League comes along. But again, very similar to all the forward options, they are rotation risks. Now, moving into Darwin Núñez, 7.3 million. He was unlucky not to get on the score sheet in game week 4. The underlying numbers always for Darwin Núñez are outrageous. And I really would love to own him at 7.3 million. And if he is going to play as a centre forward, which I've discussed for many weeks now, he doesn't need a centre forward that drops into half spaces to pick up the ball. He has those players now, Klopp. He needs a player that is going to cause carnage for them. Darwin Núñez is that man. And I really do think that his minutes are going to be great at centre forward. Now, I do think he's still an early minutes risk, which is the problem. I see situations where he comes off at the 17 minutes and Gakpo comes in into the 9 or Diogo Jota. But the long-term fixtures are amazing. And if you want to go for a punt and you believe in Darwin Núñez, I think he could be the ultimate differential. The problem is the conversion rate is still suspect. He still isn't putting the ball in the net for the XG that he's accumulating. But any professional that racks up the numbers that he does, I'm just certain the goals do come eventually later down the line. And I think Darwin Núñez is an amazing differential if you want to go down that route. Now, last up, probably the riskier one is going to be Gabriel Jesus. And the reason why I say that is because he only just come back from injury. But I still think that he is absolutely essential to the way that Arteta wants to play this season. Because I think he does a bit of both that both Nketiah and Havertz do not offer. He can drop into those half spaces and get the ball as good as someone like a Havertz, but I also think that he is stretches the game like an Nketiah can at times. Now, is Nketiah a better finisher? Yes, I would say so. But I think Jesus is just one of those players that Arteta wants to get back into the team and has probably seen the international breaks as an opportunity just to give him a few minutes before and then look to get him back in fully integrated after the international break. Now, the stats historically are amazing in an Arsenal shirt for Gabriel Jesus. Things do funnel through him and he makes other players better around him. And he's the differential option in at that Arsenal attack. If you're sat there with double Arsenal and you want to move away, I think Gabriel Jesus is the one that's going to really pump you up the ranks if you want to go down that route. The problem, fixtures are a little tricky. The introduction of Champions League football and also returning from injury. We just don't know whether he is going to be a 90-minute man or not, or whether they are going to slowly ease him in off the back of their injury. But look, these are 3 options I think you absolutely need to consider. Let me know if any of these are on your radar for game week 5. Moving into the last few hot topics of the video here, I don't want to keep you any longer. So when should you play your wildcard? I think we're in a situation right now where teams are looking a little bit more ropier. Maybe there's some rotation risks, some injuries that have arisen in your team, but you've held off using it in game week 4, and we're currently in the international break. Now, historically, the international break is a great time to use your wildcard because things can happen over this 2-week period. We can see further injuries to your teams, and the wildcard with those unlimited transfers just gives you the luxury to build the team that you want for the foreseeable future. Now, it's worth noting, when should you actually play your wildcard in terms of your physical squad? I view it as if you have 6 or more significant transfers that you need to make, then I think the wildcard then needs to be on the cards for your team. If it's 3 or 4, I'd much rather you take a small points hit to adjust your team to get it to where you want it to be. But if it's 6 or more, I think that's a big enough points hit to justify that the wildcard is needed for your teams. And I do get it. Going into game week 5, there are some people out there that have just big problems in their sides, and maybe using the wildcard is the time. Now, if you're in a situation where you're looking at your team thinking, it's pretty damn good, then I think holding off for now is the best route. And I think using it in the next international break is actually the better time. We have an international break between game weeks 8 and game weeks 9, another 2-week period. And the big thing about it is that we'll have 8 game weeks worth of information. So I think we'll be in a situation where we've had a bit of Europa League football, a little bit of Champions League football, and we'll get an understanding on which players are rotation risks, which teams to avoid, just more data, which is really important. The big thing as well is that game week 9, we have an amazing fixture swing for Liverpool. Everton at home, Forest at home, Luton away, Brentford at home. Unbelievable fixtures. And I don't really expect a lot of managers to be going into that week with triple Liverpool, especially if they've already used their wildcard in the past. I am really bullish on Liverpool this season. And I think getting into game week 9, what an amazing opportunity to maybe integrate Salah, Trent, and a differential attacker into your teams come game week 9. I think that's going to be the real upside of playing that wildcard in game week 9. So that's when I'm planning on using it, and I think that's a great time for you to use it if your team is still looking really solid right now. Now, for those managers that are maybe sat there with a few defensive problems in their team, some injuries, maybe you're sat there with Gabriel and he started in game week 4, but you still wanted to sell him. Just wanted to bring up the defense fixture difficulty, courtesy of Fantasy Football Fix here, on which teams you should target. Now, Fulham are top of the ticker for the next 5 game weeks, but I find it quite difficult to invest in Fulham unless you're going for a goalkeeper transfer in Leno. Otherwise, I don't really think there are many defenders that we would consider for our teams. But I think the one we definitely need to have is Newcastle. Now, I'm not as bullish as others in regards to Newcastle because I think defensively, they're going to get stretched over the coming game weeks with the injury to Botman. I think he will be back for game week 5, it is worth noting. But then they have the Champions League fixtures, and what a tough run they have. They have the Milan game between, let me just check here, between game weeks 5 and 6. And they also have the PSG game after Burnley, so between 7 and 8. So they are going to be stretched over this fixture period. And although I really back Newcastle defensively, I wouldn't be as bullish going into them just because of the Champions League games that they have to contend with. So just have that on your radar. Man United up there, but with the injuries that they got, they might be going into game week 5 with Johnny Evans and Maguire as centre-backs. So I don't really want to think of offering a suggestion there to you guys. Outside of that, I'm not too confident on some of these teams. Forest, Bournemouth, Villa right now, wouldn't really invest. Luton, Brentford, if you want to go there. So kind of on the face of it, I don't actually think many teams are looking great for clean sheets over the coming game week. So maybe the thought process is just go for the ones like a Udogie, for example, who has a few tricky games but has those attacking potential that we could get those double-digit hauls. So Newcastle one to monitor, but not really that bullish on others. Let me know your thoughts. Right then, and last up, I just wanted to quickly give you a game week thought for review on my own personal team for those that actually may care on how I got on. So it was a red arrow, but it was a small red arrow. I was 204k going into game week 4, and I'm now 227k after game week 5. And honestly, I'm delighted with that. That is such a fantastic rank to be going into the international break. Delighted. I was in a worse place last season for sure. So this is good building blocks. I had 78 points. The standouts in Bremer with that last minute goal was just absolutely sensational. Madison was my transfer in. That turned out really good. Rashford with the 7-pointer. Now, end of the day, 40 of these points are Erling Haaland, so it isn't like the best week in the world, but Diaz coming in, I sold him, brought him in for Gabriel. That didn't turn out too good, but I'm happy to have him for a little bit longer. The big problems in this team, goalkeeper department. I think I might need to ship out Pickford, but with the rotation that I've got going on with Pickford and Turner, I probably will just play Turner this week at home against Burnley, and Pickford may have another week in my team. And I have one free transfer going into game week 5. Now, of course, I'm not going to do anything early. International break, let it happen, see what happens. But I would like to roll my free transfer to take it into game week 6, give myself 2 to then maybe make a goalkeeper transfer and make some adjustments. I'm not as desperate as others to sell Nicholas Jackson going into game week 5 because I think the numbers are still good. I think his game time's still going to be good. And I think Chelsea are not necessarily unlucky, but the XG numbers from a team perspective are still there. And I do believe in them from an attacking perspective. I just think Pochettino needs to get it back to a back 4 and really integrate some more attackers around Nicholas Jackson. But look, all in all, delighted with game week 4, delighted with the start of the season, and hopefully we can keep chugging along and get ourselves into the top 100k. But importantly, you guys let me know in the comments, how did you go on in game week 4 and what was your current overall rank? Yes guys, okay, that's going to wrap up today's video. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know it's the international break, but I thought it would be worth just doing a quick game week 4 review video just to cap off any of those hot topics. Now we can have a nice little rest. If you're new around here, please do consider smashing that subscribe button. I know 80% of you that are watching are not subscribed. What are you playing at? And of course, like the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Cheers.